Aloha, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to join, and then we'll get started shortly. Again, thank you for everyone for joining. We have a few more people who are still logging in, and then we'll kick this off in just another minute. Okay, I think we're about ready. We have most of the group here. Aloha, I'm Diana Singh. I'm our Business Innovation Coordinator for the Office of Economic Development, and you are here for our Innovations Grants webinar. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. As we get started, I'm going to introduce you to our team. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we'll be discussing today, so you know what to expect as we go through the webinar. Just to do a couple housekeeping items though before we kick off. During our webinar today, we will have a dedicated time for question and answers. So during the session, if you could please hold your questions until the end, unless there's something really pertinent to the topic that we're discussing. To give you an overview and a little intro, again, I'm Diana Singh from the Office of Economic Development, and I'm joined here today by several of my teammates from the office. Ben Sullivan. Ben, do you want to give everybody a wave? Sandy Ka'awai, you want to give everybody a wave, Sandy? Nolani Brune, our Director for the Office of Economic Development. And we also have Sarah Blakely with us today. She's an account manager with Amplifund and will be helping us through the process of learning how to use the Amplifund system and how to apply for our grant. To give you our agenda, our overview for what we'll be doing today, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background just so you understand what it is we're looking for, understand what these innovation grants are. Nolani is going to share information about eligibility for the grant. Sandy will then share with you the timeline, the criteria, and the process. Nolani is going to get on and share us all those helpful tips, things you need to know, and recommendations. Then the part you're probably all waiting for, Sarah will explain to you how to use the Amplifund system to make sure your application is submitted properly. We'll open it up to Q&A after that, where the team will be available to respond to your questions about the grant. And hopefully we'll be able to get to all of those questions today, but anything we don't get to, you can email our OED grants@kauai.gov, and we will respond that way. So again, why are we here? We're here today to talk about the innovation grants that the Office of Economic Development is requesting proposals for. As you've likely seen the RFP listed, we had an advertisement in the paper on Sunday. We've advertised it on our Kauai Forward website and the Office of Economic Development website. So you've likely seen the request for proposal by now. If not, we encourage you to go check it out. In a typical year, the office would put out a grant and aid process that funded a wide range of things, from events, local programs, in a variety of industries. But as you know, COVID has changed many things in our community, and it really caused us to rethink how we are spending those funds and the types of programs that we're going to be funding. With the changing rules and changing landscape because of the pandemic, we can no longer fund events and some of the programs that we've traditionally funded in the past. And that's how we started with our innovation grants. We as an office questioned, how can we best fund programs and projects that solve the problems our community is facing right now, whether that's because of COVID-19 or because of long-term problems that we've been facing. We're looking for new ideas and new projects that we can use to solve those problems here locally. Ultimately, we're looking to fund 10 grants of up to $50,000 through the innovation grants process. And as I mentioned, we'll talk to you through about the timeline for that process, the eligibility criteria, and all those individual aspects. But what we want you to start thinking about are, what is a problem that I can solve? What is a new approach to that problem? And also potentially, who are new partners that I can solve that problem with? And with that framework, that's how we want you to come into this grant process. I'm going to save most of the details for later, and we'll probably discuss them in each of the individual aspects of our agenda today. But just to kick that off, let me turn that over to Nalani to talk to you a little bit more about eligibility so you understand who it is that will be able to apply for these grants first.
Hello, everyone. Melanie Brune here. So for eligibility, I'm going to cover two areas because I know there's two questions about it. So first of all, as far as what type of project is eligible, we want the project to basically, one, like Diana said, work to solve a local problem. And in the application itself, it's actually going to directly ask you what problem you're trying to solve. And that's to kind of get you in a good mindset about this application is about solving this problem. And that is what all of the narrative I'm going to be putting in there ties back to. And secondly, we really wanted to have an economic development angle to it, because this is Office of Economic Development funding. And when we were given the ability to utilize this funding, it was really all about economic development. So there should be that element to it. We love good-hearted projects, but we really need them to be someday focusing on either solving the problem and hopefully creating jobs or creating economic development. Secondly, projects that are not eligible. So basically, programs or projects that currently or previously are funded with CARES Act funding. So we're not going to be looking at projects that are already funded, and also projects that currently have state or county grant funds that are already funded. So those ones will automatically be taken out of the realm. Now, who is eligible? So basically, because of the way that our systems work here at the county, we do need to fund a nonprofit or a not-for-profit organization incorporated under the laws, of course, of the state of Hawaii, where we lived, exempt from federal income tax by the IRS. So you should have your letter that signifies that you are a nonprofit organization. If you're an educational institution, because we have had them apply to some of our projects, or a Kauai-based business, you would need to use a nonprofit as a fiscal sponsor and a partner. So we realize that ideas come from everywhere, but we do need you to hook up to a nonprofit to get your application in. On page 1 of the RFP, when you look in there, you will find some additional requirements that whoever it is that's applying needs to have. Basically, some of the areas are bylaws and policies that you're going to be required to have. A year of experience in the project or program that you are pitching. So if you do find a nonprofit to partner with, then you want to make sure that nonprofit has some kind of experience in the area that you're pitching. So it's just not out of the blue nonprofit that is a friend of your auntie's or something like that. You want to make sure that that nonprofit has staff that's trained to do grant work and management, make sure they can manage money and manage it properly. And the other little thing, which I will also have in my tips later, is that you want to start thinking about Hawaii Compliance Express and that you will be compliant, because that is one requirement that we cannot get around and that we must have when we're contracting or doing grant agreements with organizations. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Diana.
Thank you, Nalani. As Nalani mentioned, their eligibility criteria is included in the RFP document, so you can also review that if you have any specific questions about some of the compliance elements she's discussing. And as she mentioned, again, this is an opportunity for new partnerships. So if you are not yourself a nonprofit organization, but the work that you're doing aligns with a nonprofit organization on our island here who's doing similar work, and together you can team up to solve a problem, those are the kind of partnerships that we're looking for in this grant, finding ways to work together to solve our problems. So thanks for clarifying that, Nalani. Sandy, if you could give us an overview of the next step.
You're muted.
Sorry, we are taking questions today, and we will be taking more questions up until December 18th. Any questions that we get up through then, we'll get a formal written response to everyone that's actually registered in the system. So if you aren't already registered in Amplifund, I highly recommend that you just at least register. Even if you don't end up putting in an application, you will get we will use the system to correspond with any prospective applicants. So you can register and not apply, but still get any type of notifications like answers to the questions today and through email through December 18th at 4:30. And then we will respond in writing again. We're going to be using the Amplifund system to respond. So again, be sure you are registered. And we will respond by Tuesday, December 22nd at 4:30, because then we're all going to go on vacation. And then after that, it's just the final proposal due date, which is January 19th at 4:30. The system will automatically close and we won't be accepting any applications after that. The process in-house after that is to go through the proposals that we've received and make sure everything that's required is in the application packet. If there's some applications that are missing documents, it will be rejected by the screeners. So make sure that before you press the apply button, that you have everything in the packet. And you can apply and do, you don't have to do the whole thing one day. You can apply and save your work and come back to it later if you don't have something. There are items on there that are going to be required, so you're not going to be able to actually click the application button until those items are uploaded. So that'll be stuff like your bylaws, etc. If you've read the grant opportunity, the application, I believe, is in the back, and it asks, I think it tells you what's going to be required. And then once we get past that stage, we are going to put the packets together for our selection committee, and that will go to them shortly thereafter, after the 19th, and they will meet and they will pick their top proposals, which will then go into our new component of this process, which is our public comment period using Consider It. So that will be open between February 2nd and February 8th. And we are going to be asking for community input on the selected proposals. That will close on February 22nd at 4:30 p.m. And then it will go back to committee. It will go for final scoring, including the public comment part. The public comment is actually worth 10 points out of 100. And then you will be notified by March 8th whether or not you have been selected for one of the 10 grants. At that point, we will start getting the paperwork together to get the grant agreement executed. Everything is going to be done electronically. So you will need to have Adobe sign, at least the ability to electronically sign documents. And then the actual contract period is going to be between April 1st and March 31st. Some of the criteria, if you've read through the RFP at all, what we're looking for in our evaluation committee will be, so the phase 1, the screening will look and make sure all the documents are there. Phase 2, the proposal will evaluate it using the criteria that's listed in the RFP, which is basically the project need, which will be worth 50 points. The fiscal capacity and accountability, that'll be worth a maximum of 20 points. And then the qualification and experience of the proposers, that will be worth another 20 points. And then again, the extra 10 points is going to be based on the public comment. And I think that's it.
Sandy, can you, a question that I know has come up before and we're also getting in our chat or in our Q&A now. Can you explain, are there any limitations to the length of the proposal?
There are not. There are some places in the application, like organization names that are limited to, say, I think 1,000 characters or something, but most of them are unlimited. They can fill in as much as they need to, especially on the project parts. Those are all unlimited. All of those questions about the project are unlimited characters.
And I have two more eligibility items that I'm hoping you can talk about before we move over to Nalani for the kind of recommendations and tips. One of the criteria that we stated in the grant is that if you received CARES Act funding, you aren't eligible. Can you clarify how a business that perhaps received, or a nonprofit that received CARES Act funding, are they still eligible to apply, but not for the same program? Maybe you could clarify that, piece.
I would say yes, they are eligible to apply, but it would have to be some kind of different project that was not in the original proposal, some kind of different component on how to do something, or some kind of different, even though they could be tied together, it would have to be whatever that component is will be only considered on its own. It won't be considered with the rest of the project. So when you're describing your project, you have to make sure that it's an individual component and not a part of another project. It has to be a specific, separate piece of the project.
And before we move on back to Nalani, one last question for you, Sandy. May an organization apply more than one?
Yes, yes, different projects, yes, definitely.
And is there any guidance, as long as they're different projects, that's sufficient?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome.
We'll move it back to Nalani then. If Nalani, you can share some of the recommendations and tips that you've mentioned to help streamline the process for everyone.
Sure. These are short, there's not a lot, but there's a lot that we've learned over the many years that we've done RFPs that are good to point out over and over again. So first of all, remember in your head, January 19th, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. I can't express to you how important that date is, because if you miss it, it's all over. So please, January 19th, 2021, 4:30 p.m., we'll all raise a glass of whatever we have to say that you've done it. Secondly, when you look in the RFP, you're actually going to see a budget sheet. It's just an example budget sheet, but we do have a mistake in there. It says 5% for admin fees, but it's actually 15%. So we'll be making that correction when we come out with the question and answers. My next tip is that the match is not required, a cash match or an in-kind match this time, because we know that everybody's in a world of hurt right now. But if you do have a match, which we highly encourage, it will look good to the selection committee members. So if you can get a match, it's a good thing to have. Another tip is to please answer the question first. Whatever the question is, I can tell you that a lot of selection committee members, what they'll do is they'll actually look at the proposals twice. So the first time around, they will skim. So they'll look at the question and they'll look usually at the first line that you write. And then they'll skim down, trying to get an idea overall of what you're presenting. And then they'll go back and do a deep dive on each question. So I always try to tell people, answer the question first, so that answer gets plugged right into the reviewer's head, and they already kind of know where you're coming from. If you make them look for the answer, that I can tell you as a past reviewer, it's frustrating. So make sure you answer the question. Let's see, like Sandy said, don't press the apply button until everything's in place. That's really, really important, because we can't go back in and fix it. So for that, you can take your time, just make sure all those elements are in there. And please, if you go through the RFP, you'll see that there are elements that are required to be uploaded. So you're gonna have specific things that need to be uploaded, including a separate document on your list of board of directors, including names, titles, and affiliations, your corporate resolution or bylaws, or other documentation that verifies who can sign for the organization. And the point I want to make here is that please read your bylaws, because many bylaws, they'll submit them, but they don't actually say who can sign for the organization. So you need to make sure it's in there. If it's not in there, you should get something like a corporate resolution done. Sometimes that takes your organization to have a meeting so that the secretary can sign off on what the agreement was in the meeting. That's going to take time. So now's the time to really think about getting that done. Another thing that you'll have to upload is your, if you have it, is your Hawaii Compliance Express. I can't tell you enough how important it is to get that out of the way. Even if you don't have it yet, apply for it now if you don't have it, because it can be difficult. It includes tax verification. And as we all know, the government isn't exactly operating on full speed right now. So get it done soon. But that is not a required thing at the front end. The fourth thing you'll be uploading if you is the budget summary template. So you'll download a template and then you'll upload it. So you have to remember to have that. And then there will be 4 spots in there if you want to upload other items like letters of recommendation or other things that you want to put in, but not a video. I think Sarah's going to cover that, but no videos. That takes too much room. Okay, let's see what else.
Lonnie, we have a question about.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I thought you had, if you have more items on your list.
No, go ahead.
Interrupt. We had a question about proprietary information in the applications, and really it should be clear and known to everyone applying that any of the information you provide may and very likely will be shared publicly. So please do not provide anything proprietary. We are not able to hold it in confidence.
Absolutely. We're a government organization. It's government funds, and we're managed by the laws of the OIP, which is Office of Information Practices. So pretty much if somebody wants to get information that we have, they can get it. So if it's proprietary, you want to keep that safe. And last but not least, my last tip, very important, is please read the whole RFP. That's really important. Maybe read it twice. That would be good. Because a lot of people try to apply without reading it. There's a lot of things in there you want to keep abreast of, make notes in it. And I can tell you, you'll enjoy the process much better because nothing will get left out. And I will leave you with one last tip. January 19th, 2021 at 4:30. Please don't wait to the last second. I would say start early and maybe press that button on the 18th instead of the 19th. But for those adventure seekers, I'm sure that you will wait to the 19th, but please don't wait past 4:30. So mahalo.
Nolani, before we pass it along to Sarah, can I jump in? Do you mind talking just a minute longer about the budget? We did get a question earlier about, does the project need to be completed in whole with $50,000, or can it be contributing funding to a larger project? So if you could answer that and talk a little bit more about the match versus not having a match.
Yeah, so 50,000 is the maximum amount that you can ask for us from our pot of funds. If you have other funds, that's great. So it could be a much larger project, but our portion of it would just be 50,000.
And in fact, the scoring criteria does allow for a better score should you bring matching funds to the table. So there is actually a benefit to you to try to secure matching funds, whether that's in the form of a letter of commitment or actually having the funds in your possession and noting that in the application.
Sandy, do you have something that you want to add before we move over to Sarah?
Yes, I wanted to add one more thing about the application. At the very end, there are the ability to upload 4 additional documents besides your application. So if you have anything else you want to share, and again, we're not accepting videos or large graphic files, that you can do it there at the end of the document. If you have like a ton of recommendation letters, just scan them and put them all together. So it's one file in case you need to upload something else besides letters of recommendation. That's it. That's what I needed to say.
That's a great tip about combining the files. Thank you, Sandy. Well, with that, what you probably all want to know is, how do we use Amplifund? And Sarah's going to walk us through that process before we jump into our Q&A. So again, if you could hold your questions while she's going through that, unless it's specific to Amplifund, and then we'll get back to the larger Q&A after.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Thanks so much for taking the time to come. This is a pretty easy system to use. So once you click on the apply link on whichever website you look at the opportunity, it's going to bring you to this Amplifund launch page. So the first things you're going to see are the opportunity details. So I know we talked a lot about reviewing the whole RFP. This is going to give you just a brief description of the opportunity, let you know where you can reach out with any questions. And then the important information, so it gives you the funding information, so it gives you the total funding for the program, and then the award information. So lets you know how much the maximum amount you can ask for, lets you know the start date of the award, and then lets you know those ever important submission close dates. So it's listed here, so you always can view that. And then it also gives you those question submission deadlines that were discussed, and the information to include with any question you submit. And it does provide some eligibility information along with an additional link that you can go to. So now that you have this opportunity landing page, you probably want to know, okay, how do I apply? And the first thing you want to do, you can click on apply here, and it's going to take you to the Amplifund login screen. So if you've never created an Amplifund account at this point, you'll want to register. So you can just click on this register button and it will take you to a very simple registration screen. Anything that's required is going to have an asterisk. So your email address, it'll have you set up a password, provide your basic contact information. None of the address information for your personal is required, but down below, it's going to have you then complete your organization information. And this does require addresses, and your phone number is not required, but you can include it here. And then you would just click on register and it would take you back to the application. I already have a login, so I'm just going to go ahead and put in my login information and then just select login, and it brings us back to that application landing page. So up at the top, you'll see you can print. This is going to allow you to print this opportunity. There's a help button. It's going to let you know who to contact if you have any questions. You can also download. This will download not just the opportunity details listed on this landing page, but will download the entire application for you. So if you wanted to download that to review, or if you wanted to print it here, and then you could review it before you even go into the application and get started. There's a save button. There's nothing really to save on this landing page, but it's just kind of there across the entire application. And then of course, the ever important apply button. Before I jump into that, I did want to point out, if you click on the icon here in the right-hand corner, it's going to take you to your applications page. And this is, if you've used Amplifund before, you can actually view your old applications here. If you start your application and don't necessarily finish it the first time, you save it and you want to come back to it, you can access that here. I know Nalani and Sandy shared that you can submit more than one application if you have more than one project. So you could view those different applications here, the details, whether it's been submitted, and what the submission open and close dates are, and then the title of your application as well. These are some test accounts, so these aren't related to this opportunity. So if we go back, the apply button is where we'll go next. So the first thing you'll need to fill out is the project information. So this is where you're going to name your application. And for those who are going to be submitting more than one application, you probably want to make sure you give them unique enough names that you remember which application goes with which project that you're completing. You'll put in your award requested amount and then fill out primary contact information. Anything throughout the application that's required is going to have that asterisk. So just remember that you need to complete those fields. Down at the bottom, you have a save and continue, and then this mark is complete. This mark is complete is really important because if you fill out everything that's required on this page and you hit save and continue, it's going to take you to the next section. But you want to make sure you mark everything as complete before you can submit your application. That's one of the requirements. So if you don't have this green circle with a white check mark on each one of these circles, you're not going to be able to submit your application. So once you completed this information, save and continue, mark is complete. You can either hit save and continue to come to this application form, or you can just click on this button right here. And here, let's load it. Okay, so here you'll see the application form that you need to complete. For this opportunity, there's just the one application form. From this page here, you can see the status. So if you've started the application form and saved it, this would say in progress. If you've completed it, it would have complete here. You can also print from this screen. So we're just going to go into the actual application form. Up at the top, it does have some instructions for you to read before you start. You can download the entire RFP from this link. And as the instructions suggest, please read the entire RFP before you complete and submit your application. But then going down, like everywhere else in the system, any required field is marked with that asterisk. And so just complete all the information. These are some of the bigger text boxes that we talked about, that these don't have a character limit. You'll see a character limit if there is one. These also allow formatting. So if you wanted to bold something, maybe do a numbered list or bullets, you can do that. You're also able to upload files. So these are some of the ones that were discussed. And then one other thing I wanted to point out on the actual application form is down here, there is the project budget. So this is, you would download this template that has been uploaded, complete the template, save it, and then you would upload it. So we can go ahead and download it just to see what that looks like. And then you are able to open that. And then you would just complete it, save it, and re-upload it. So once you fill out all the required forms, these are the additional attachments you're able to upload that were discussed. And again, you would want to mark as complete once you're completed. Otherwise, just save and continue, and you can come back to review. So once you've completed your project information, your application form, the next step would be to submit. So on the submit page, we can see that it's letting me know that I haven't completed all the required fields to be able to submit. So once you have everything complete, all of these circles are green with a white check mark, then you will be able to submit. You can review your application before you submit it. So if you click on this, it will download, you can review it. And then once you submit, like Sandy and Alani shared, we can't go back and make any changes at that point. So make sure you review everything before you do submit. But you'll get a confirmation message that you've submitted. And then like we showed, you can click on that icon to check on the status of your application. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty user-friendly system, pretty easy to use.
Sarah, we did have a question I'm hoping we can ask you while we're on the topic of Amplifund. Someone has asked, can you upload something that has a link to a video? So Sandy has made it clear, don't upload a video as one of your attachments. Is there an opportunity to upload a file that includes a link to a video?
Yes.
And then another comment we received about Amplifund is just a heads up, the first thing we come to after clicking the application is a click to proceed agreement. So just a heads up that they're seeing that.
Yeah, there are terms and conditions when you're registering. That is part of our standard process.
Okay. So I think what we'll do is jump into the Q&A. So if you do have questions, whether that's about Amplifund or about the grant itself, you can start entering them in the Q&A. One of those questions, which is coming in already, which I'm going to hand over to Sarah, if that's all right, is do the attachments need to be PDF?
I believe you can do PDFs. You can also do Excels, Word documents. I can get the entire list and make sure that we share it. But as I shared, no video files, no JPEGs.
For the OED team, we've had a couple questions coming in about eligibility, particularly as it relates to organizations that might have received funding from the CARES Act. One of the questions is, if I received funds for a CARES Act project on Oahu, am I still eligible to apply to this grant? And the second question is, if my organization has received CARES funding for unrelated projects, are we ineligible? Can we take those two?
Take it. So the CARES Act project on Oahu, I believe you can apply. That'll have nothing to do with a project on Kauai, likely. And the second one, what was it? I've lost it already.
If you received CARES funding for a different project,
Oh, yeah.
Are you still eligible?
Yes. So if you've received CARES, and yeah, absolutely. As long as it's a different project or a different, so some projects are very big, right? And we like those because they're trying to make a difference. And they will come in phases. So say in CARES, they worked on phase 1, which was creating whatever this wonderful thing is. And then maybe at this point they're at phase 3, which is totally separate from phase 1. That could actually come in for funding. It maybe had gotten funding at one point from CARES, but that's done. And now you're moving on to another phase. And so you could apply here for a different phase that's completely different from the first project.
Oh, one thing I want to add. One thing I want to add, Diana, I think that there's a little bit of confusion sometimes about the relationship between this grant process and the CARES grant. And I think that where the emphasis can be at is again to remind people we're looking for innovation in this grant process. And so as an example, if you were a food bank and you said, I need 4 more trucks to deliver food around the island, while we think that's a wonderful and important mission and we certainly support it, this grant application is not intended to just help with something that doesn't relate to innovation, but relates more to just proceeding with an important task in the community. So if on the other hand, you said, hey, I have this new technology or this new system that's going to enable us to help our volunteers to somehow distribute food much more effectively, and it requires software and it requires all these things that we've never done before, that could be an innovation. But just buying 4 more trucks and you've already got 12 of them is really just an incremental change to how you're doing business or a capital purchase, and that's not the intent of the grant.
Yeah, that's a really good clarification.
Yeah.
We have a couple Amplifund questions again, which I'm going to kind of group together, and then we'll get back to the actual grant questions. The first one is, once you mark a segment complete, can you still go back and edit it? Sarah, could you answer that?
Yes, and I'm actually testing that right now to see if that is possible. So
Perfect.
Answer that. Was there another Amplifund question?
There was, yes. Can you cut and paste into the text boxes? So presumably cutting content you've prepared elsewhere and pasting it into the text boxes on Amplifund. And will the formatting remain the same?
So you can copy and paste, but it will lose its formatting. So it will retain some of it. It doesn't do like color text and things like that. But if there's bullets, it will maintain that. but it will lose some of the other formatting.
One of the other questions that we've received was about, in the first webinar, you mentioned some topics, but there was no mention of them in this one. And just to give everybody a context, what that's referring to is we previously hosted 2 virtual economic summits. If you weren't able to attend that day, the video recordings from both of those are available on Kauai Forward. We encourage you to watch them because they're interesting. One was devoted to transportation solutions for our island, and the other one had a lot of discussion on innovative ideas similar to this grant. So I encourage you to go back and listen to those. What's interesting about this particular innovation grant, as you'll see in the RFP when you read through, it represents a variety of types of problems and industries on our island. Your grant can be related to agriculture, technology, transportation, small business, tourism. There's a wide number of industries and community needs that are represented through this grant. And it provides an opportunity for you to apply for something that is in your area of expertise if you have a solution for that. Again, it could be any number of particular topics or industries which are outlined in the grant in the RFP document. Let me go through some more questions that have come in. We did receive a question, Nalani or Sandy, maybe you could take this one. Can your organization still be eligible if they have a PO box for their mailing address?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Just as a note with that, so if you get funded, it needs to be your organization's, whatever's on your W-9, because that's what we'll have to ask for at some point in order to make payment. So try to keep your one address. We have some people that have multiple addresses. So
And whatever's on their HC compliance paperwork.
We did get a question about how the community input review will be evaluated. Ben, I'll take it unless you want to, but I think you're probably a better spokesperson for that one. If you could talk a little bit more about Consider It.
Sure. So we are using a tool called consider.it, and you can go to that actually URL to learn more about the tool that was also used in the Aina Aloha Futures process in the last few months in the state of Hawaii. And that tool basically surfaces questions and concerns that a community might have about an application. And so the way this will be used is not quantitative in that it's not going to generate a score to be applied to your application. But what it will do is it will allow the public to give thoughts and input that then the scoring team and the evaluation team can utilize in generating the final score for your project. So really, it's an opportunity to surface both good and good thoughts and positive thoughts about how useful your idea is, but also potential concerns or drawbacks about your idea and why it might be challenging, so that we have a much more rounded perspective about what it is you're proposing in terms of innovation and how successful you might be.
The next question we have is, can in-kind service or equipment be considered as a match? So from a budget perspective, would an in-kind service or equipment be considered part of your match?
Yes. Simple answer, so yes. But while I have the floor, while people were talking, I remembered a couple of other things. Another tip is when you upload your documents, especially your budget, open it once you upload it, open it and make sure it's what you want. We've had a lot of people fill things out and then somehow they uploaded a blank sheet. So that would knock you out completely. So make sure anything you upload, you open up before you click the submit button. That's really helpful. Another thing I thought of is if you go into the tourism realm and you're given an idea for something you're thinking about in the visitor industry, I would recommend that you really consider whatever it is that you're proposing, that it's not dependent on the visitor industry, because that's something we're really trying to get away from. I think that the selection committee will probably see that. If you're proposing something that's completely going to be dependent on visitors buying or visitors doing something, it's probably something that's not sustainable as we are learning at this very moment. So just consider that it needs to be something that can pivot to residents, to visitors, to other ways.
And I was just going to answer the question. If you mark something as complete, I wanted to double check, but yes, you can go back and edit it. Until you submit, you can edit anything, even if you've marked it as complete.
There's a question that was particularly interesting to me that asked, earlier grant notices included waste management and climate crisis as focus areas, but this has been eliminated. Those have been eliminated in the most recent notice. Are those focus areas no longer considered? The answer is no, they are absolutely considered. And if you read page 15 of the RFP, it specifically says, here's some example project types, but these are not intended as a comprehensive list. So again, the importance here is that you make the case in your application that what you're proposing is innovative and that what you're proposing is solving a real and legitimate local problem. So certainly climate change can be made, the case can be made. I wouldn't have a job if it couldn't. That's an urgent problem locally and that we need to address it. Same with waste management, an urgent problem and we need to address it. And so glad you asked the question. Please don't consider the examples as all encompassing for projects you can submit because they are not.
We did also have a question wondering why tourism is one of the categories if we want to move away from the visitor industry. And I can explain, I think that's based on what Nalani was saying. It's not that you can't submit for tourism, but we can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing with tourism. And kind of in the same line as we're learning with all of these, we don't want to repeat funding the same things. We want a new project and a new idea. So if you have an innovative solution to problems we're experiencing with tourism, certainly that would be eligible and would be considered. And as Ben said, and I think we are all saying in this, make the case why it's new and make the case about what problem it's solving. We do have another question. Will you fund 80% upfront and 20% upon completion? And how will this be assessed?
I guess it's me, no? Yes, that is the plan. We're going to do an 80-20 split. Basically, upfront we'll do 80. We usually ask for a progress report right then and there to see where you are as you're starting off. It could be nowhere. It could be, oh, I've already done all this legwork. Here's where I am. Here's my next steps. And we like those progress reports because they tell us, it gives you the chance to tell us if something is going right or something is going wrong, because those things are important. We really want to encourage communication back and forth, because if we can help you, we want to. We want your project to be successful. So sometimes it's, hey, I'm having this problem. What can I do? And between us as project managers, I'm not project manager, but grant managers, and you as a project manager, we might be able to come up with some solutions to problems. But in general, it's just to keep us in communication with you, so that as other people are asking us how things are going, we can report back and say that the process was a good one.
As we go through and continue to get questions, I just want to send out the general reminder as well, which we've discussed before, is that if we don't get to your question today during the webinar, or you have additional questions, we do have the questions email, oedgrants@kauai.gov, where you can send those questions. If you would like a response, the closing date for the receipt of questions is Friday, December 18th at 4:30 p.m. So if you'd like to have a written response to any questions we don't get to today, or anything that comes to mind after this webinar, again, by Friday at 4:30, oedgrants@kauai.gov is the address. And then the other kind of word of advice that we want to make sure everyone understands is that we don't necessarily want to give feedback on individual ideas or individual problems that you're trying to solve on the webinar. If you think your proposal is solving a problem, if you think it could be eligible, we encourage you to thoroughly review the RFP document and apply. So if in doubt, do all the research and put in your submission. The worst case we can do is say no, that is not eligible. But if you wait until after the deadline, then you certainly will not get funded. So if in doubt, apply, do your research ahead of time. And that's our kind of standard guidance there. Let's jump back into some more questions. Do we need to be a nonprofit organization to be eligible? And are new business startups eligible? So as we mentioned, I believe Melanie explained this earlier, yes, you would need to be an eligible organization to apply. However, if you are a new startup, you have an innovative idea or solution, and you have someone you can partner with on this project, that is where this could apply to your particular business or organization. I'll go through some more questions. I'm not sure if we mentioned this one. I think, Sarah, this is a question for you. Is there a mechanism to print their full proposal? So after they've put in their application on Amplifund, is there a way for them to print their entire proposal?
When they click on the review, they're able to download it and they can print it from there. So it will download your entire application with your answers and everything.
Diana, if I may, I want to go back to the question you just answered, which related to if I'm not a nonprofit, can I apply? And really emphasize, if you look at criteria C for scoring qualifications experience, there's actually criteria for partnerships, and we really value partnerships. So you're going to score better if you submit with a partnership. So do not think that, hey, I got this great idea, I just want to run with it myself. That is certainly still eligible, but you're actually going to receive more points potentially if you submit and say, I have these partners and they bring this experience. You know, this, maybe there's a private sector partner who really understands the nuts and bolts of a particular application. Maybe there's a public sector partner who really understands how to reach the community on the particular issue. We want to see partnerships. So please don't think this is something you got to go it alone on, because the opposite is really the case.
And along that lines, I think it's also a valuable time to mention, you know, we've been talking about all of this from the perspective of someone who's applying for the grant. Some of you joining us may not be applying. You might be interested. You might be an organization who's interested in partnering or just learning about this. And this is where it's worth mentioning that, again, the community input tool, whether you're applying for this grant or not, you have an opportunity to see all of the proposals that have come in and to participate on that side of the equation as well. So in addition to the fact that you might want to submit your own proposal, you also have the ability to view and provide feedback and to see what people are doing in the community and what they're proposing, which can be a great way to learn more about what some of our local organizations are doing here and the type of expertise and projects that they're going to be working on. So again, the Considerate tool is what we'll be using for that piece, and we'll share the specific details in February on that. We do have another question. Does the project proposal have to be totally new? What if it's something that was done before, but they're looking to modify it to adjust to the challenges that we're facing in 2021? Anyone want to take that one?
Sure. If it's an innovative proposal, your chances of scoring better are going to be very high. If it's something you have done and you've been doing for 10 years, it might occur to those evaluating your project that it's not necessarily a new innovation, and that's something to consider. Certainly, just because you did it once doesn't mean it's not an innovation, but really it's going to be up to you in the application to make that case.
Ben, this question is for you. Ben used increasing trucks as an example of what might not qualify. What if it was to replace fossil fuel with electric trucks? Or is it more innovative than something like that?
You know, I'm going to go back to the fact that we determined we were not going to give any preference to specific ideas on this. So certainly, you know, there's innovation to happen in the transportation space. If somebody, I'll give another example of what would not be innovative. If you had a fleet of vehicles and you just wanted to replace them with Nissan Leafs. straight away. That's not innovation because Nissan Leafs have already reached the market. They're already being used broadly here. I'm going to leave your truck question alone because it's a little bit more complicated, but please read through the RFP and consider applying if you think it's an innovation.
We also received a question, how many applications are you expecting? And the answer is we're not sure. We're going to find out on or before January 19th when you all submit your applications, and we'll be so glad that they're on time. Do we have any other questions from the group that you'd like us to answer while we're live on the webinar today? We have about 4 or 5 more minutes. If anyone does have something we haven't covered yet, please add it to the Q&A. I believe we've answered all of the questions that have come in. Nilani, Sandy, Sarah, Ben, does anyone have anything you'd like to add before we wrap up our session for today?
Just mahalo for being here, mahalo for listening, and we're really looking forward to doing some reading in January. Yes.
We need your innovations. We got to solve a lot of problems together, and you guys are the key to that. So bring your best ideas, bring your best partnerships, put a lot of thought into these, and we're here to partner.
The recording from today's webinar is going to be available online. So if you missed any part of it, would like to watch it, we'll make the recording available. Again, remember any questions are due by the 18th, which is Friday. And with that, we hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us today.